All right. Good morning. It's October 1st and the government has shut down. And I kind of figured that was going to happen. And, a lot of people have been talking about it on the news and, what significance this has. This kind of goes along with the theme of what I've been saying here. You've got Uranus going retrograde, or has already gone retrograde, is going to this conjunction of Alcyon, and very, very powerful. And I've been reading a couple of comments that were posted before I came on, and one person says, oh geez, I got the 0 degrees Pisces sun and Gemini rising, and the energy is intense. Well, I've actually talked to several people lately, and again, what that means in plain English to anybody who doesn't know is Saturn and Neptune are hovering around that 0 degrees Pisces and Aries point. And again, I was just on Frankly Speaking, or Quite Frankly, the other day, and we were talking about this, where Saturn and Neptune are going to conjunct for the first time in many thousands of years. Now, there's dispute about this, but I actually went through ChatGTP, and I also did a model on some of my software. Best I can see, this has not happened in the very first tropical degree of Aries, where Saturn and Neptune have come together. Saturn and Neptune come together about every 38 years. So it's not like it doesn't happen, right? And just like most of the conjunctions will happen in so many odd years, right? It's just astronomy. But it's when they happen in certain very specific degrees in the tropical and sidereal zodiac. I know a lot of people trumpet, oh, we use sidereal, it's the only accurate one. Well, I got news for you. My opinion is they're both accurate. They both are applicable in different techniques. And I find the tropical zodiac is very accurate in mundane astrology, meaning when we say mundane, that doesn't mean boring. It means it is about the world. It's also known as world type of astrology. It's interesting. I was having a conversation yesterday about how the House of Wisdom, which was in the Arabian countries, actually might have saved a lot of traditional astrology. Now, India is different. India has a long history. But the Egyptians, the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, all these wars that were happening, right? Everything in history is war, 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 right? We're talking about it right now even. Well, what's fascinating is there were a couple of Jewish astrologers, well, not astrologers, scholars, I should say scholars, and they didn't like astrology at all. I was kind of the same way too. I was thinking, come on, astrology, does that stuff really work, right? So this is back in the 4th century, 8th century, 9th century. The sultans in the Middle East, so you got to remember, before World War I, right? Remember Lawrence of Arabia, it was the Holy Land, Egypt, and Palestine. That was it. You didn't have, you had regions, but not these countries like we have now. So these sultans started discovering all this astrological knowledge that came up out of Egypt, particularly Greece, Babylonia, which is, of course, the Iraq area now, and other places. And they said, wait a minute, we're going to lose this stuff if we don't translate it into our languages. So 2 astrologers of note, one was named Abu Mashar, the other one was named Saul. And what got me on this track is they penned a prolific amount of astrology from the ancient worlds, and they were skeptics. But once they started translating this stuff, they said, well, we're just putting it in from one language to another. And think about that. This is back in the 4th century through, 8th, 9th century. It was quite a task to learn how to read and write. Literary, skills were really valuable back then. And only the elite and the educated had it, right? So what's fascinating is these guys were translating this stuff, and they said, wow, they started checking out the astrology to see if it was crazy or not. And to their amazement, they're like, this stuff's really accurate, right? So the reason I brought that up is mundane astrology is about the world. It's like rains and so on and so forth. This is the stuff I mentioned Benjamin Franklin was referencing, William Lilly, and so many other, many, many later astrologers kind of stand on the shoulder of these ancient astrologers who talked about the mundane astrology. They also talk about it in Vedic astrology as well, or Jyotisha. These are different branches. Well, anyways, why I bring that up is because we have Saturn and Neptune conjoining for the first time and quite potentially thousands of years in this degree of the zodiac, the very first degree of Aries. You know, you can get it in the 10th degree, 3rd degree, 9th degree, whatever. But the very first degree, that was always considered in the ancient world as when God started the world, when all the planets started in Aries. Now, we don't know if that's true, but if that's true, that would be a very exceedingly rare occurrence. So we are going to have Neptune and Saturn join, and that's reality dissolving. What does it mean, right? That's what we really want to determine. Weather could be weird, off the charts. Why Saturn and Neptune always tend to have that, but it's happening in a fire trine, or the Aries, Leo, Sagittarius trine, which is very powerful. And it also is going to probably bring a lot of strange stuff. And of course, what do we got going on here? Cyber attacks, all this stuff being discovered. You know, there's a lot of very violent things going on in the world right now. Let's hope it doesn't happen, but it has certainly got the background energy to happen. So anyways, yeah, a lot of people are saying, I'm already feeling that, and, you know, so on and so forth. Yeah, a lot of us do. You know, the other positive thing is a lot of people might have positive aspects with this Neptune Saturn conjunction. And when you have positive aspects, you usually get enlightenment. Neptune is the channel between the so-called subconscious mind and our lower conscious reality, which is really interesting stuff. So I just wanted to bring that up. But by the way, we just had a first quarter moon, right? I mentioned that in the thumbnail. And that's, I always mention that, you know, like yesterday I'm walking and someone says to me, hey, you know, the moon is half. I said, well, no, it's quarter. And the person said, no, it's half. I said, no, it's quarter, because see, the new moon is when the moon is dark, right? And then the first quarter, you'll see the moon in the sky is half. It's almost split right down the middle. The moon is at its half cycle when it's full, see? And then the third quarter, it'll be half again, but on the other side when it's going to the third quarter. And then, of course, we have the new moon. The moon is such an important energy, I find. All the ancients always felt the energy of the moon. And if you ever want to do a little astrology experiment, and this is one I played with right away when I first started getting into astrology, just pay attention to the days that the moon is conjuncting Saturn, conjuncting Mars, opposing Mars, making hard aspects to the malefics, which in this case would be Mars and Saturn first, Pluto second for sure, and then Uranus and Neptune. Whenever it's making hard aspects are the squares, the oppositions, and the conjunctions to the malefics, right? And also pay attention to when it's making positive aspects, when it's trining things, when it's sextiling things, when it's conjuncting Venus or Jupiter. You see, then it's magnificent. Everybody's like, wow, this is, you know, everybody's happy and smiling and walking down the street. You know, when you see Mars and the moon coming together, people get out of my way. It's a busy day, right? So it's very interesting how, even if you don't believe in astrology, these energies pervade. I've seen it a million times, actually. It's amazing. And it's always, I used to sit in a coffee shop in Beverly Hills years ago. And I would say to the person I'd be sitting with, I'd say, you know what? You're going to see a cop come by very soon. And well, how do you know? I said, because Mars is ascending. Sure enough, Mars will cross the ascendant and there goes a cop cruising by. Or we'll hear sirens or something, you know. So it's very interesting how these energies do seem to permeate reality, even if you don't believe it. So fun stuff. So anyways, I'm going to pay a little bit more attention today to some of the comments. I actually put the comments on my screen here so I can see them, but I'm only one person. It's hard to see. But yeah, a lot of people are saying hi. And yeah, someone here is saying it's a waxing first quarter. That's right. And that's good that you clarified that, because waxing means the moon is gone from the new moon and growing in light. That's what waxing means. And of course, it cumulates at the full moon. Then we go into the waning phase. Now, in Vedic astrology, they call it Krishna Paksha and Shukla Paksha. So it's just different words. Once you get used to this, very, very, you know, and it's fun because I used to do a lot of work with organic herbs, and I love this stuff. And I've had a lot of clients talk to me about this. You can actually plant at certain times when the moon is waxing. You can also plant at certain times with rooted plants where there are more roots and things when it's waning. And you can also harvest herbs. In fact, many of the apothecaries used to do this in medieval times, all the way back to Egypt and, of course, in India too, Ayurveda. They would know that if they harvested the plant at a certain time, you would capture that energy. It would stay in the flow of the sap or, etheric flow of the plant. And they would administer them at certain times. And there's so many different plants out there. It's absolutely stunning. And they all are ruled by different planets. A lot of these ancient astrologers would pay attention to this in the traditional astrology as well as the Ayurvedic. And really interesting stuff because, we all just buy our herbs off the shelf, right, and take them, which, I do that too. But it's really cool if you experiment and have the time in an herb garden where you plant and harvest certain herbs at certain times that are ruling different planets. And it's the moon is one of the most central things to look at on that. So it's a lot of fun stuff. So anyways, it was good that that person brought that up. Somebody's saying here, hey, Jeff, do you think the moon is an organic consciousness or a satellite created by a Maleficent, etc.? That's a really good question. I don't know. I will say this, the moon is a very mysterious thing. I've talked to so many people who have claimed, there's bases on the moon. I've actually seen, I really love cinematography and photography. And I have actually taken what did I go up to? It wasn't even that long. It was about 1,000 millimeter lens, 900 millimeter lens. And if you have a good 8K camera and you focus it on the moon, you will be stunned at what you see coming in and out of there. When I was over in Tucson, with the sky is a little clearer over there, the light pollution is as high. I would see craft and objects flying in and out of there left and right. Can't make this up. And again, if you study astrology, even if you don't believe it, the moon has an incredible effect on the journey of life. In fact, in Vedic astrology, one of the most important things is where the moon is placed in the Kala Chakra dosha and in the Vimshatori and other types of doshas. Some aren't Nakshatra based. Nakshatra means the lunar mansions of the zodiac between the moon and the earth. Absolutely stunning how accurate it is. And the Egyptians and the Chaldeans also use that as well. They had a 28 lunar mansion. So, and they both have efficacy. I know a lot of the old Vedic astrologers I've studied with, we use the 28 lunar mansion. See, most modern Vedic astrologers use the 27 lunar mansion. And you can use them both. But there are a lot to that. So anyways, so a lot of great comments here. I'm just trying to pay attention a little bit more to the comments. I put them on my screen so I can see them rush by. There's a lot of comments here, and I appreciate everybody joining me for these comments. But someone's saying here, during the full moon, most of the sap life force is pulled up from the ground parts of the plant and end during a new moon. That's exactly right. So cool that you brought that up. This is somebody named Moonsprout. I don't know who they are, but great comment because, it was fun. I grew up in northern Wisconsin in the woods, and I lived with a guy for a while, Andy Anderson. He's actually quite well known. He's a guide, and he used to guide a lot of famous people. And I came outside one day, and he's stirring this big canoe paddle in this big tub, right? And I said, well, Andy, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm making maple syrup. And I said, wow, that's really cool. And I didn't know how you made maple syrup. And all it is tree sap. And he would drill a hole in the tree. And you're right, during the waxing moon and to the full, it would give much more output into the buckets. And during the waning moon, not as much. And of course, it does flow most at the change of seasons. At the spring and fall equinox, it flows a lot. But it's stunning how you can take a maple tree and take the sap and just boil it down. That's all you do. You don't add nothing. There's nothing. It just, you boil it down until it's nice and thick to the thickness you want, bottle it up, and you got your maple syrup. And that's, I love maple syrup. I don't know about you guys, but I love it. But really always tasted so good when you'd harvest it. And again, there's the moon. The moon regulates so much stuff, even the tides. Look at the tides of the oceans. Anybody ever pick up 5 gallons of water? It's kind of heavy, right? You won't get too far with that. So you got to rest, right? So, when you look at the millions, probably trillions of tons of water that is moved by these tides, high in, low out. So absolutely amazing how this stuff works. And again, not only the waxing waning phases of the moon, but also the apogee and perigee of the moon, how close and far away it gets from the earth. The moon is amazing. It really is. And whether it's a satellite, to answer your question before, or someone put it there, there's a lot of ancient lore to that. When you get into the book of Enoch, which is a very interesting little book, I think I got that thing sitting right here. This is one version of the book of Enoch. It was put out by, I think this is here by Joseph Lumpkin. Yeah, this is pretty solid. He's actually got several different versions. He's got, I think, 3 books, and he talks about the fallen angels. So there's a lot of lore about this solar system being, put together by the watchers. And this stuff's in the Bible too. It's very interesting stuff. And the Vedantic lore talks a lot about this stuff. Very mysterious little place we live in. And especially if you start looking past the veil into some of the ufology. I know I have had so many experiences with vehicles shut down, missing time, living up in the North Woods. We have seen so many paranormal phenomena. I used to actually chart UFOs on our lake. I lived on a place called Lost Lake, just south of Sainer, Wisconsin, way the heck up there. And I used to actually chart these things on a piece of, notebook papers. And my dad thought I was crazy. One day I got him up at 3:30 in the morning. I said, you come down here. I said, look at that. He says, yeah, you're right. He said, that's pretty weird. Some people postulate they're military or were involved with them. Definitely some very mysterious things are going on with all that. And now when you get back to the moon and all these planets, I have been around a lot of interesting folks who are very advanced in this research. And there's all kinds of photographs with craft coming in and out of the rings of Saturn. One thing's for sure, it does appear this solar system was put here for the modulation of spirit into matter. And I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't alien as well as angelic forces in a hierarchical system that maintain this particular, you could say, matrix, because it really is a matrix. I always say, forget Trinity, Neo, and Morpheus. This is the real matrix. So, but yeah, all kinds of stuff here. The fallen angels landed on Mount Harmon and the 33rd parallel, the first headquarters of the UN. Yeah, you could be right there. I've heard all kinds of stuff. I've actually seen, this is years ago, I was in, there's a set of towers on Wilshire Boulevard in Doheny. And I was up at the upper floor. I was having a meeting with someone, and I actually saw a guy shape shift, and he was over 7 feet tall, maybe taller. And he saw that I saw that again, and he freaked out. And then, boof, I was around the corner. But I've seen some weird stuff. And I think a lot of people have. I've had a lot of people tell me what's going on. In fact, I knew Dr. Lear. I had mentioned him many podcasts ago. Really nice guy. He's passed away now. But Dr. Lear was a surgeon, and he had removed implants into people, sent them to laboratories, had them tested. This is not woo-woo stuff. This is like science proving we can't make anything like this. So metals that were undetectable in terms of manufacturing processes and hardnesses, etc. And interesting stuff. So we are definitely living on a very interesting planet. And the moon has, throughout history, as far as back as we can go, has always been central in astrology. And where the moon is in your chart is a very important placement, and the aspects that are made to it. Many Vedic astrologers, including myself, will look at certain mundane times, and you look at the planet's position in relationship to the moon. It's actually called Chandra Lagna. Chandra is the moon, Lagna is ascendant. It's interesting, if you pick that word Lagna apart, it actually means where spirit manifests, which is quite interesting. Again, we've got a matrix here that is really pretty cool. Someone's asking here, do you know about the Ark in Santa Monica in the 90s? No, I don't. That one I don't know about. Well, that's an interesting topic. Yeah, a lot of great questions here coming through. I'm trying to pay more attention now. Yeah, someone's saying my moon is in Rohini in Vedic. Right. See, now what that person is talking about is the lunar mansions. See, there's actually 27 lunar mansions used in traditional Jyotisha or Vedic astrology, but there's also four padas, which means there's 108 divisions of this lunar zodiac. Moreover, and this is the cool one, this is the Kala Chakra lunar mansions, which are sufficiently different. See, there's 108. A lot of people who do mantras and prayers will notice in gemstones, like I have a lot of people charge gemstones, and the mantra is to be chanted 108 times. Well, why do they do that? Well, 108 equals 9, which is spiritual completion. And it also mirrors the 108 divisions of the lunar mansions. What you're seeing here on the screen is probably really hard to see, but you can see right here where it starts from Aries, Taurus, all the way around to Pisces. Well, you can see there's grayed out areas. These are the reversed time dimensions, if you will. Very, very fascinating stuff. The Kala Chakra Dasha, which brings me to, I just wanted to mention, I don't want to get political here today, but a lot of people have been mentioning Jimmy Kimmel. He's all over the news, right? You know, he came back and now the network's picked him back up. And this is interesting about the moon because Jimmy Kimmel, I did his chart just real briefly, and I found out not only is Jimmy Kimmel having a Saturn return this coming spring, which is really rudimentary astrology. Anybody who's been around astrology has heard of Saturn returns, right? And if you haven't, I always say life is a 3-act stage play. Act 1 is when we're born. Act 1 ends at right around 28 to 29. Why? That's your first Saturn return. Then the next 28 and a half to 29 years, almost 30, the Saturn will rejoin again. Well, Jimmy Kimmel's right at that age. See? He's born in 1967, November 13th. I don't, nobody had a birth time on him, but I did kind of rectify him. And if I'm right, he's definitely got, well, it wouldn't matter what time he was born that day. He would have Saturn returning to Saturn this spring, which is right around April for him. And more importantly, he's got Saturn transiting his moon, known as Sarisate. And isn't that interesting? Because now back to the moon. And again, you see this in all of the ancient religions and spiritual practices. And that is, they talk about the moon is related to our emotional response patterns to things. And interestingly enough, the moon is also likened to the womb, which is the nurturing factor of a mother creating a physical garment for the spiritual soul to have an experience in time and space. So, you know, again, I always love to show these diagrams. Let me see if I can get this thing here to work. Where did I put it? I keep hitting the wrong buttons here, but I'll share my screen. And maybe I'll share my screen. There it is. Okay, so if I share the entire screen and we do that, we come over here, you'll see here, I've got some pictures. And again, I always mention how all the glyphs of the planets come from 3 symbols. And the first one is always the sun, which is the circle, or you could say it is the, I don't know what the heck's going on here. Well, I can't circle anything. I thought I had my tools up. But anyways, I'll just keep doing that. So the sun is the circle, which is, again, the seed, if you will. And the womb is the nurturing factor called the moon. Well, the moon is also the lower conscious mind. And in the ancient Hebrew documents, they talk about, in Aramaic documents, they talk about how the lower consciousness is actually what forms, and it is the moon. That I talk about a lot, which is known as the nefesh, or you could say the lower conscious perception of reality. So what's fascinating about the moon, and I've seen this a million times, where people have hard aspects to it, like Neptune conjuncting it, squaring it, making an opposition, they got trouble. I mean, they can really feel this emotionally. And again, look at down here. It's kind of hard to see at the bottom, but I lost my pen today. I don't know where my disappearing pen went, but I always love that thing. And the moon is also what is referred to as our emotional perception of reality. And like I always like to say, there is no reality, right? There's only perception. There is a reality, that's for sure. You walk across the room, gravity always works, right? But sometimes it works too good when we fall. But, we are all in this reality structure through our perception of reality. And this is so important to keep a hold of the lower conscious mind because it's a very powerful thing. So, but anyways, someone's saying here, for 15 years, I've lived in a farming community and they always planted the crop on a waxing moon in a harvested on a full moon, or waxing moon is increasing, right? And then they harvest the reward on the full moon. That's right. That's right. This is one of the oldest things. Even the Farmer's Almanac pays a lot of attention to that. So yeah, very interesting stuff. And root things that they would plant during the waning moon because it was underneath, you see. So really, really interesting stuff. But yeah, farmers follow this stuff, whether they believe in astrology or not. And again, I've always mentioned it was Benjamin Franklin who had actually started the Farmer's Almanac. If I can find that here. Yeah, here it is. You can see he created the Farmer's Almanac, and it started out as Poor Richard's Almanac. And so interesting stuff. Again, I mentioned how our founding forefathers were very steeped in occult knowledge. And again, Masonry, all this stuff is really goes back to Egypt. In fact, really, Freemasonry is based on Egyptian lore. And, again, I'd met Manly P. Hall. And if you ever get his book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, pretty interesting stuff, what's in that. Many different cultures and religions and esoteric knowledge is in there. I like it a lot. So I want to look at also, too, some more comments here. So, yeah. So, yeah, someone's saying here, look at October 10th when the moon goes into the Pleiades, right? See, every month the moon's going to go around. Well, it's interesting you bring up October 10th because one of the things that I find is a big deal. I took a look at this month, and I had mentioned Uranus is going to conjoin Alcyon, which is really one of the main stars on the edge of the Pleiades. And yes, the moon sweeps around every month. I didn't look at that exact aspect, but I will. And thanks for pointing that out to me. But also, one of the things that I took a look at was Donald Trump's chart. Now whether you like Trump or hate Trump, we got some things brewing, not only in this country, but globally, that are very powerful. And if anybody's been on social media or listening to kind of the back rooms, you'll hear that there's been a lot of meetings with Trump and Hegseth and generals, and there's been a real amping up of course, military might as well as awareness. And you may have heard in Chicago, they popped like 200 people in the Tren Diagwe gang, and helicopters were over it, and all these agents were coming in and out of there. Of course, we're seeing the National Guard be brought into more places. One of the things that I heard this morning was they've been busting people in Oklahoma on Interstate 40. I used to go down Interstate 40 when I would travel from the Midwest on motorcycle trips. And that cuts through Oklahoma and across the top panhandle all the way into California. In fact, 40, I think, ends at the 15 in California. So it goes a long ways across the Midwest. And the State Patrol in Oklahoma was popping all kinds of illegal aliens driving semi-trucks with licenses apparently issued from New York. It may have been some other states, and the licenses weren't even valid. Some were expired for a decade. Others didn't have a name on it. Others had a first name on it. I grew up around semis, and every now and then I play with them, and if I got to haul something. And what's fascinating about that whole genre is you got an 80,000 pound truck there, and you can kill people in an instant. And, to have people who can't read English or who are not really trained in this equipment, not only, all the time out here in California, I'm steering around with my motorcycle, stuff falling off trucks because people don't fasten it down. I see bed springs. I see, chairs and, recliners in the middle of the road. Everybody's going around it. So it is so dangerous when we travel to not have safety on the highways. And that stuff is so dangerous. And why I bring that up is I think this month we're going to see some really, really powerful things happen here. And I think what's going to happen is Trump on the 19th of this month has secondary progressed Mercury conjuncting Mars. And you might say, okay, great. What does that mean? Mercury-Mars conjunctions can be dangerous. They can also be very intense. A lot of activity going on, a lot of communications going on. Mercury is the general ruler of communications. Mars is always violence and war. So we're likely to see, with everything going on here in the United States, a lot of things amping up. I also think this is applicable to everybody else too. Look what's going on in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and other parts of the world. We got this Gaza thing wrapping up. It looks like they might have a peace deal. Let's hope. But the owners at the top of the pyramid, they really want World War III, and they do. And this is why I think all the generals are being called together, and they're pushing for a very strong defense and offense here. So, and again, not to mention Venezuela. So we've got some dangerous stuff here going on. And again, this is all in the month. And as that moon goes through a crescendo, not only does tree sap flow more, but so do people. And the events could get really intense between the middle to the latter part of this month. And let's hope it doesn't. But we're seeing a lot of stuff pop up here. So, it's again, something to keep aware of. So anyway, I'm reading some more things here. Someone's saying Gematria. They're mentioning Gematria. That's cool. Yeah, Gematria is so cool. Gematria is numerology in the Aramaic Hebrew sense. And I'm glad that person brought that up. I do this all the time. I'll be around people and I'll tell them, I got to go because I got to go calculate an angel. And someone will say, what? I say, well, I got to go because I got an angel I got to calculate. And what I do, I mention this all the time. I do a lot of different pendants where I calculate a person's angel from their birth chart. Very, very fascinating stuff. And you could see this here shows, you can see there's 7 letters. It's a little bit hard to see because it goes by quickly. But I actually calculate this from the sidereal positions of the inner 7 planets. And I give people the gematria on that, which is really cool. And now I've been putting it into some on small rings and so on and so forth. Really cool. In fact, next podcast, I'm going to put some of that stuff on the screen and you'll be able to see it. But there are correspondences in gematria. You can see this one here. It's really cool. But correspondences of gematria means numerology. And this is something that got lost by the bearded men in Rome who were murdering each other for the first 300 years or so, give or take, when they translated the ancient texts of the Bible into the Vulgate translations, and it got further lost in English. Now, you can do things in other languages. I've seen Rosicrucian stuff where you can do in English, which it does work, but it's not as slick. It's not the same. The ancient Old Testament was known also as the Torah, right? And also the Psalms, which are really old. Some of these Psalms could be 4,000 plus years old. And there's codes and ciphers in them. And those ciphers are literally rearrangements of the alphabet into codes. And if you have the cipher, you know how to decode it. In fact, it is Exodus is permutations of 72 angels that are known as the Shem Hemaforish. And boy, there is a lot of magical stuff around that from the kings and the queen days. You get into all kinds of stuff, very dangerous stuff too, I might point out. Again, the holy sacred magic was having angels come to you to teach you this stuff rather than trying to figure it out in the human lower levels. And magic can be very dangerous to play with, especially if you get into the real stuff, because it's there. I always recommend stay away. But anyways, the bottom line is it's fun to do the Gematria because when I do it, I actually find people are from certain tribes, from certain kings, or they have certain connections of their soul root to different trades that they had done. Can't make this stuff up. So it's actually proving astrology shows your karma and potential past life linkages to the soul roots. And I think that rabbit hole goes so much deeper than we know how to do. They say anything that happens, there's an angelic force that's printed from the positions of the heavens. And if you think about that, it's got to be a lot of angels up there, huh? And of mixed nature too. The high angels are very divine. But as you get down deeper and deeper into the physical worlds, you get what they call a mixture of angels and elementals, which now you see why there's demonic forces in this world. And thank God, literally, for the good ones. But interesting stuff. And it was cool that someone brought up Gematria. So, anyways, a lot of comments here. I got to kind of cut my time short on this podcast because I have a kind of a busy schedule, tight schedule. I got to get here today. But yeah, a lot of great stuff here that people are commenting on. There's one here, Mr. Mission Control. He's talking about there's nothing artificial in synthetic in this room. Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about, but yeah, I mean, when you think about it, I had another great conversation. I always love talking to clients in readings because we get into so many different fun topics. And one gentleman was talking yesterday about longevity, where our cognitive capability, the older we get. And I just read people might have seen this on the news. They just found a lady who just passed away at 117 years old. And the doctors were busy studying all, her eating habits and genetics and so on and so forth. And one of the things that they were talking about was gut health. In other words, the microbes in the bacteria in your intestines. And, I think we're all capable of living very long lives. I always mention the reflexology. I love reflexology. And I've, been putting that unit up on the screen, which was the reflex roller. If you just Google reflex roller USJ 101 and you get some good diagrams, it's amazing. Like yesterday I was working, I've had a lot of problems with my throat over the years. And what's interesting is I've been really clearing out huge crystals. And I probably headed off at the pass some very dangerous stuff that could have happened. So a lot of stuff here. So there's somebody here saying, I love these names everybody's got on here. One person's called Moonsprout. I thought, that's a good one. Like that. So they're thanking and they say they're glad to found the channel. Well, thanks for joining. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, King Solomon. Somebody's mentioning King Solomon here, and that's interesting. They brought him up because if you ever look into the ancient texts, there's something called the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon, which are all about the 72 angels and spirits that rule the firmament, and they actually surround the zodiac. And there is another dispute. Which one is it, sidereal or tropical? So interesting stuff, because the tropical zodiac is actually fixed. To the critics of the tropical zodiac, it is fixed. How is it fixed? By the solstices and equinoxes. And that was another thing I wanted to mention. And this is a really important point I wanted to make. You're seeing Comey get indicted now on these 2 counts. I think this is just the beginning. And then you're seeing Ray. I don't know if they've charged him yet. I think they have. And if they haven't, they're going to. You're going to see a lot more indictments coming up. And I think you're going to see a tremendous amount of upheaval. This government shutdown is very likely to not go too good for the other side. Again, I'm not a Republican Democrat. I don't want to get political here. But I can tell you this is something that's probably going to damage even more a lot of these NGOs and funding organizations that we've actually been funding our own destruction with. And these bankers are slick. And so are these people who are coming in. This is really a war between the new one world order and nationalism. And you see it across the globe. We see it in Europe. We see it all over in the westernized countries, particularly down, and from what I'm hearing, also in Australia, New Zealand. And what we're really seeing here is a push to decentralize money and put in these digital IDs. There are people who are complaining right now in Europe. Well, my food's turned off. This is turned off. That's turned off. Or I've gone past my quota. See, this is very, very dangerous stuff. And the Great Reset and all these things people are talking about, this is what Uranus is about, going over the Pleiades. Uranus is clocking back over Alcyon and other stars. So we are in for a roller coaster ride of events between now and next spring. So it's going to be very powerful. So anyways, so a lot of people are making some interesting comments here. I got to laugh at some of them. Yeah, did anyone bring up digital ID in the UK? Yeah, I just did. And very dangerous stuff. Very dangerous stuff. This is what the New One World Order wants. They want obedient populace, and they want everyone to be coded. And I'm hearing things, even with the AI in the United States, as good as the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is, we got to really be careful with AI, because we're turning over so much power and data that right now it's okay. But if it gets in the wrong hands in the future, and again, I've been mentioning this repeatedly, just watch the basic stuff like Saturn and Pluto aspects. We've got the next Saturn-Pluto square in 2028. People might say, well, what does that mean? Well, the last one was the bank crash, the financial crash, the implosion of the housing market. Before that, we had 9/11. What was that? That was the Saturn-Pluto opposition. And then I can't omit COVID. COVID changed this world. I mean, everybody agrees. COVID was so intense. That was the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Could have set your watch to it. And I have to say, the tropical was more accurate than the sidereal in that one. The sidereal Saturn-Pluto conjunctions happened in the summer of 2019. But when it clocked into January of 2020 on the tropical, right on. That's when the dinner bell rang. It's like, oh my God, be afraid, right? Put your mask on. So very interesting stuff. So this never stops. It'll creation will never stop. And no matter what happens, we just keep on going on. And awareness is the big thing. So I got to get running here, but a lot of great thing people are commenting on the drones. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. And of course, we've heard about this so-called comet coming in, and some people are saying it's a craft. Some people are saying, no, it's a comet. And it's not acting like a comet. It's doing all kinds of strange things from the magnetics of the sun. So we'll see. We'll see what that one is. I haven't looked into that, but a lot of people have been asking me. I'll look into it sooner or later. But I'll just tell you what the chart says. So we've really got to be on our toes here, because I think this is going to be a very dynamic time. And, I was looking also, too, at Trump. He's got a solar arc, Pluto sextiling Mars. So he's going to be really aggressive between now and next summer. He's going to really be pushing the envelope because it's in his chart. He's also got solar arc, Saturn sextiling Pluto between now in February. So we're going to see a major push here to vacuum out all the stuff that's been happening to this country for the last many years. And, a lot of people aren't going to like it, but it's going to happen. I can tell you that. And I think we're also going to see a lot of legal stuff. And this is what I mentioned about the spring equinox. Remember, I had said way back at the beginning of this year, I said, the ancients always, and we talked about that earlier, how these ancient astrologers saved the ancient astrology called mundane astrology of the world. And one of the things they would always do is cast a chart at the spring equinox, summer solstice, fall equinox, and winter solstice. When I looked at this year, 2025, wow, we are going to see unprecedented things happening, and we're in it now. We're in it. Like I said, October through November, I said from fall forward, we are going to see stuff hit the fan. I'll tell you that. So everybody, thanks for listening. I wish I could stay longer, but I got to keep these in the middle of the week short. And but anyways, A lot of great comments here, and I wish I could. A lot of people mentioning Enoch here, paying homage to their mother. A lot of great stuff. Yeah, moms are great, aren't they? So without moms, we wouldn't be here. Dads too, but interesting how the mother is such a nurturing factor in all life. So powerful. So you guys have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you on Sunday. Thanks for watching.